What we're going to do is to get people to ask a question, and that question will then be answered by each of the candidates in turn. So we're going to start out with Simon for the first question, then Susan will back first for the second question, and so on around the table. But each of the four candidates will answer the same question. We're giving them 1.5 minutes apiece to answer the question. So if I can ask you then to put your hands up to ask a question, it would be very helpful if you said who you are and where you're from at the start of the introduction. Please also do make sure that what you're doing is asking a question and not making a political statement or just ranting on about your own views. I'm sure you won't do that. Gentleman at the front here.
There seems to be a curious conspiracy of silence over Brexit, but I'm glad to say it's been mentioned this evening. My question is, would you, that is each of you, allow the British electorate to have a say on the final deal, assuming we reach a final deal on Brexit?
Thank you for that. So Simon, if you'd like to back first, maybe comment on whether it would actually be legal for us to have a final view on it, given we've already started the Section 50 process.
I absolutely think it would be legal, and I'm very pleased you've asked the question, because the Green Party's view is exactly that. And I think it's the only common sense view that there is. We should, as a British public, get a second referendum on the terms negotiated over the next 2 years. Because the original vote was a vote that was a clear yes or no question. It wasn't a, this is the terms that have been negotiated, do you like them or not? So in terms of a purely democratic standpoint, I think it is entirely right, and it is Green Party policy, that should we be elected, we will hold a second referendum on the terms negotiated, and it will be a simple, do you want this terms negotiated or do you want to stay in the EU?
Thanks, Simon. Susan, your views, please.
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me?
No, can't hear you.
Yes, absolutely. It's the reason I'm standing in this election. It's the cornerstone of Liberal Democrat policy. It is absolutely democratic to offer people a choice on the final deal, and this should include an option to remain in the EU if people feel that that is the best option. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Heidi.
I'm afraid at this moment in time my answer would be no. I was... can you hear me? I'm trying without the microphone. I'm getting nods from people. Sorry, Antony would like me in the microphone, would he? Sorry. My view is no. The referendum was a different kind of vote. It was a national question. It wasn't a local one. And I know that probably the majority of people in this room tonight will think, well, we don't want it. But we can't forget that this was a national vote. And I think it's wrong for us as democratic leaders to be picking and choosing the results that we don't like. Do I think Parliament should have a say? Absolutely. And I was one of we called ourselves the Brexit 11, the Tory MPs on the back row who worked very hard to negotiate with the government through the Article 50 process to ensure that Parliament will have a say and be involved in the detail. And now we have that. And if we talk about Parliament being sovereign, then that's what that is.
Yeah.
So I've worked hard to achieve that with the likes of Ken Clark and Anna Soubry. We worked as a team and we've secured that. But I don't believe the British public, I think those that voted to leave would think we were treating them as fools and that they were stupid and we didn't respect their views. So I feel a second referendum is not, thank you, is not what we should be aiming for.
Thanks, Heidi. Dan.
Well, it's an interesting point because our system isn't about referenda, and yet it's something that now we've come to accept we should have again and again. So if you look at the sort of history of referenda very quickly, it's weak governments who are gambling on the outcome, who are guaranteeing that always, the golden rule in the referendum was that people would vote for the status quo. So Cameron is a gambler. He gambled, of course, with AV, knowing who's going to win. He gambled with Scotland. We'll see if he wins that in the long run. And he gambled with the EU. We've seen what's happened there. So if we go back to the people for another referendum, I'm not sure. I think I would question this, though. The squalid little campaign we saw, £350 million to NHS each week. If Heidi's got Michael Gove's number, I'd love to text him now and see if he still believes in that. That campaign was appalling. And what did people vote for exactly? Some people wanted to take back sovereignty of their laws. Other people wanted to keep away immigration and foreigners out of our country. Some people had other reasons. Maybe they don't like the free market and they think we'll be better off just trading with ourselves in the future. So I would like Parliament to be sovereign again of our country and actually let Parliament decide these issues. I think leadership is saying if our country is worse off in the future because of Brexit, and I think it will be, look what's happened to the value of the pound, inflation and the cost of living already, then maybe we should do something in the future to stop that. Whether that be a referendum or Parliament deciding, I don't know. But I do think we should stop it if it's a disaster for our country. And legally, we are able to do that under the Lisbon Treaty, something that we're being told constantly we're not, but we are able to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. So, next question, please, from the floor. Jackie, the lady in the grey cardigan, please.
Good for the figure or just running around.
My name's Frances Early. I live here in Great Shelford. I'm absolutely in despair at the moment. I'm in despair at the state of the world. I'm in despair at the state of democracy.
Frances, can you ask a question, please?
I'm going to, yes. I'm in despair at the state of the environment. And I think our culture has become meaner and more selfish. So my question is, do any of you have any hope for me?
Yes.
I see what you said, it's okay. So, Susan's turn first.
Well, we have to have hope, and I empathise with what you say, and we have to push a lot harder these days to have hope, but we absolutely must for our children. I think that from what I've seen of the younger generation, they're under enormous pressure, but they are also very creative, and you know, I will take my cue from their original ideas, and I don't think we have any choice. We have to even just pretend to be hopeful and take it a step forward and keep going and get involved.
Thanks, Susan. Heidi.
And Susan, in that final sentence, has absolutely hit the nail on the head. It is getting involved. 5 years ago, I didn't ever think I'd be an MP, but I got angry at the state of my country. It was the Tottenham riots that many of you know would absolutely set me alive with anger and despair. Democracy, the one benefit that I can see for me so far that's come out of the Brexit vote is democracy, I believe, is more alive than it has ever been. People understand that their vote matters. People understand that if they want to change things, they can't be a bystander anymore, they have to get involved. And I have had more young people approach me, how do I get involved in politics? Can I run to be a councillor? Than I've known. And that's fantastic. So those of us that have some imagination and drive and care for our communities and our country have to grab those people and change our society. So I have every hope, but what I don't believe is it will happen by accident. We have to make it happen. And I know whatever happens in this general election, the four of us certainly at this table will work together to do the very best we can collectively for South Cambs.
Thanks, Heidi. Dan, your views, please.
Well, I used to be a teacher, so I know full well what young people think about politics, and if on average people see the news for 4 minutes a week during a general election, children certainly see it a lot less than that, unfortunately. When it comes to despair, Francis, I agree. Unfortunately, I think at the moment we're seeing nasty, quite vicious attacks on individuals, not here, I like to say, but it has happened nationally. I think we've kind of lost our way with regards to policy, and good policy people can believe in. I think that's really important as well. And I think actually, you know what, if we did actually give the vote to more young people and really engage that generation, if we brought the voting age down to 16, brought in education for people about what policy and democracy is, that would be really, really interesting. But there's a story that I heard only last weekend actually in Shepworth with a woman who never votes, and she said there's no point. She's on benefits, she's facing problems with regards to her treatment in her doctor's surgery at the moment, And she said, what's the point of voting? Nobody ever listens to me. And I think that's a sad reality. This happens, we meet people, we talk to them, and actually 5 years goes by and people don't really feel the impact of their lives. So I think positive engagement is really important. And one thing that Simon has said, which until recently I was kind of a little bit sceptical of, is our voting system. Our voting system means that the winner takes all, and everyone else's opinions, they just feel like they don't matter. We need to think about a new way to get a new voting system to engage more people, so that everyone's voice does matter.
Thanks, Dan. And then lastly on this round, Simon.
There we go, there's hope. Dan has come round to PR.
I didn't say that bit.
I'm going to tell you that means, because Heidi publicly last time said, yes, I would vote for PR. She hasn't said what type of PR, but she said yes. Susan, obviously, I've been banging my head against that brick wall for 20 odd years, and now Dan's come round, so there's hope. In this room, I've been, well, you know, I sympathise, you know, I'm a member of the Green Party, and I've been involved in politics since I was 18, which is now far too long. And I'm here because I'm hopeful, I'm here because I'm optimistic. I hope that there will be a change. Our manifesto's title is for the next 50 years, not the next 5, because the Green Party is all about trying to develop a long-term philosophy for our planet, for our society. And for me, the biggest ray of hope would be if we could change our voting system so that I've lost count over the last 20 years of the number of people, either Labour supporters, Lib Dem supporters, Green supporters, even some Tories, who have said to me, oh, you know, why are we doing this? We know what's going to happen. And it is wrong. Every vote should genuinely count. And, you know, it's all very well saying, you know, we could all work cross-party and, oh, let's try and get together. Unless we have a proportional system that delivers to Westminster the proportion of MPs that reflect the national feeling, we are always going to be in this situation. And I hope that the turkeys in the Tory party eventually come round to allowing that to happen. It's a crying shame that every other major democracy has got PR. I mean, we've got PR in London, in Scotland, and in the Welsh Assembly. It's surely time to make a change.
Thank you, Simon. Francis, sorry about cutting across you there. I thought you were off on a ramble. The lady at the back there on the corner. Is it Katrina?
Yeah. Hi. Katrina, I live in Great Shelford. This all is wonderful. Hope is so important. Earlier this year...
Hang on, Katrina.
Lord Doves gave us all hope that thousands of refugees, and he was supported by many campaigners. But unfortunately, the government did not follow up with that. If you were elected as an MP for this constituency, and if your government whipped you to vote away against your beliefs, what would you do, please?
Question, because it was me that worked with Lord Doves to get the amendment through in the first place. And I was the first Conservative rebel to stand up and say that we needed to do more. I was bitterly disappointed when it seemed that the number of children we were going to bring was not going to be at the level of around about 3,000 that we felt it would be. That wasn't in legislation, so in fairness the government did nothing wrong, but that was the suggestion, that it would be around about 3,000. And it looked like we were going to cap it at 350. I actually put an amendment into a separate piece of legislation going through it at the time, the Children's Social Care Bill, to try and bring it back to life again, which of course my amendment, I supported it and a number of Conservatives did, but we failed. So if I have the opportunity again, you bet your bottom dollar I would.
Thanks, Heidi. Dan?
So, Lord Doves himself, if you're not aware, he was actually himself a refugee who came to this country from persecution in Czechoslovakia, as it was then. My wife came to this country as a refugee as well, and I think it's shameful that we didn't have more children who were allowed to come to this country in that situation. Since then, unfortunately, many children have gone missing who could have come to our country, and we don't know what's happened to them, but from my work in developing world countries, I just shudder to think what it was. I think on certain issues, to answer your question, Katrina, on certain issues, it's a moral conscience decision to make. There are a few things I would definitely vote for with the Labour Party, and there are definite things close to my heart I'd vote against. In that situation, I would have voted against my party if the whips were being strong. I wasn't in Parliament, I don't know what it was like for anyone in that situation. I just know that I personally would have stood up for what I believed in.
Thank you, Dan. Simon.
Well, the Green Party make it very easy to answer that question, because the Green Party actually does follow through on enlightened politics, and we don't whip either our MPs, our councillors or anyone. And so we believe that whole system is wrong, and it enables all of our single MP, but in principle, if we formed a government, it would enable all our MPs to not have to face that question. And obviously, if I was in a situation of being whipped, I would have told them where to get off a long time ago. So, for me, it's very straightforward and simple. And we all follow our belief, which, is what politics should be.
Thanks, Simon. Now Susan, please.
Thank you. We are a society with a moral obligation to follow this through, and as a society I think we are desperate to do this. We're certainly receiving a huge amount of concern now during this campaign period. I can't imagine not voting with my conscience, frankly, and I wouldn't want to be in politics if I couldn't do that. I don't actually know how who the Lib Dem whip is, but no, I would absolutely vote with my conscience. The Lib Dem words that ring in my mind from Charles Kennedy are intellectual independence, compassion, and for the have-nots in society. And I think these principles you have to stick to, because the vote is when it counts. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Gentleman in the middle up towards the front here, Jackie, please.
My name is Tim. I live in Great Shelford. I want to take the last question a bit further. Next to climate change, the vast number of refugees right across the world is the biggest challenge. Not economics, not all the other questions. The whole world is on the move, and we are not facing that issue. And I remember, as an old man, that when we didn't deal with the Arab refugee crisis after the last war, we were saying then there's going to be trouble in the future from these people. What are we laying on a time bomb for the next generation if we don't sort the refugee problem? What are the party's views on this?
Thank you, Tim. Dan first, please.
Yes, Tim, I agree with what you say. The refugee crisis has been growing, and that's because the world is becoming more unstable. And if there's anything I can't stand, I'm going to agree with a Lord Select Committee who talked about this recently and said that as a country we're becoming more insular, we're not actually doing as much as we used to try and sort out the big problems behind it. Yes, we can go and do some airstrikes in Syria. That doesn't actually get to the heart of the problem. And I think the biggest problem with regards to the refugee crisis is we have a very unstable Middle East. That's not the whole of the picture, I know. But we don't really engage when it comes to Iran, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, and the big picture. And if we're not on that world stage, it's just going to get worse. I think there's another problem here as well. If we don't truly engage with what's going on in the rest of the world and not depend on America, which now is becoming more unstable, this refugee crisis will get worse. It's not good enough to have people turning up on our shores and saying, you're not welcome. We need to think what the problem was in that country in the first place and actually try to intervene as an international community working with the UN.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Simon.
I don't know if any of you have had a chance to get to the bottom of the first page on this, and you're absolutely right. Climate change and the resource crisis and biodiversity crisis all combine, and at the bottom here I've said 2 degrees of warming, which is the international hope hope. And the way we're going, it looks impossible to achieve a 2-degree warming. So a 2-degree warming, the general consensus is around a 4-metre sea level rise. And so with a 4 just in the Bangladeshi Delta, you're looking at the International Panel on Climate Change telling us that that's going to create somewhere between 7 and 10 million refugees. So you're absolutely right. We are sitting on a time bomb, because as climate change does kick in, combined with the resource crisis, combined with the biodiversity crisis, we are going to be living on a planet which is totally unstable, because people will be moving around, because their homes will be under 4 metres of water, according to the International Panel on Climate Change. So again, this is not the Green Party making this stuff up. We're not sitting here going, oh, what can we do to sort of scare the electorate to vote Green? These are scientific figures. These are international scientific figures that are saying exactly what you're saying. And it simply underlines my point right at the beginning. It should be the main focus of our political debate. It should be the first item on the government's agenda, dealing with our planetary crisis. And unfortunately, it isn't. And that's a crying shame, and I hope enough of you vote Green to maybe nudge the policy makers that way.
Thanks, Simon. Susan now.
Yes, thank you for the question. I was born in Lebanon, where my grandparents ran an orphanage for Armenian refugees from southern Turkey and northern Syria, in the same part of the world that is in crisis today, where the refugee problem hasn't abated by any means. I think we need to use every international collaborative platform. We need to foster a culture of international cooperation, and that goes straight back to the value of the European Union and other international organizations. We need to be forceful about maintaining and enhancing our international aid. And I think also we need to be very mindful of education in this country and raising awareness in our own young people about world affairs and giving them the tools to deal with these problems.
I've got 1 or 2 people pulling faces because I
Sorry.
don't think they can hear you. Can you try and just move the mic over towards your...
Thank you. Oops.
Yes, sir?
Do I start again? Okay, it might sound rehearsed. I started by saying that I was born in Lebanon, where my grandparents ran an orphanage for Armenian refugees. And in my life, this has been a constant theme. This is the work that my family have been involved in. I think today we need to be very careful to use all international platforms, all international collaboration, and foster this notion. At a time of Brexit, that is a very powerful theme. This is a very important reason for thinking very strongly about exiting from the EU. And we need to promote all of those collaborative tools internationally. We need to be very careful about protecting and enhancing our international aid. And I think we need to also protect our own education in this country. We need to make sure that our children are receiving the best education so that they will be open-minded and resourceful in dealing with these problems. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. If you're having problems hearing any of the candidates, can you just put your hand up and we'll try and sort out the mic. Heidi.
I think the biggest challenge for us in this country is that not everybody gets it. You see it very clearly. The good news is I think our young people see it very clearly. The global dynamic is changing immeasurably, and what we're seeing at the moment is literally just the tip of the iceberg. Whether it's climate change, whether it's war, whether it's dictators, there are feast and famine. There are so many reasons why the global population is moving. If I think about us as in the UK and the fear a lot of our residents in this country had about immigration and the Brexit vote, I think maybe if the economy had been stronger and there had been jobs for everyone, you know, the mantle of, oh, coming over here taking my job, perhaps people would have felt differently about immigration, because it's interesting, in parts of the world like ours where we voted to remain, where employment is high, we actually have more immigrants, and yet we voted predominantly to remain. So I think that's an important dynamic. Reflecting on what Susan said, she's absolutely right. The International Development Fund needs to be spent wisely. We should be very proud that we're upholding 0.7% of GDP. But it is going to be a cultural shift. And what we need to understand is that not everybody feels the same way. And it's leadership from the government to take people in this country slowly through that journey. Because if our country becomes fearful and battens down the hatches, then we won't help anybody. So we have to be respectful that not everybody shares the same views. But I think we have it in us to influence on the global stage. I think we have it in us to influence in our own country, and just be hopeful that our young people do see it differently. But this is, as I said, the tip of the iceberg. I've been to refugee camps in Greece and in France, and people are travelling from all over the world, and they are not going to stop. And you're absolutely right, we have to deal with it. But I do think it's going to be turbulent in the next couple of years, but once we come through and out the other side of Brexit, and I think we see a little bit of calm, then that will be the time to whet the appetite, I think, in the British public, that we can be global, outward-looking, and do things differently.
Thanks, Heidi. Dan?
Can I just come back on one thing, sorry? I used to work in a refugee camp where I worked with Israelis and Palestinians, and I can understand the peace relationships we're trying to get there. I've also been to London about 7 or 8 years ago, where the Home Secretary, Theresa May, had vans going around saying, "You're not welcome here." And I don't think that fosters that kind of respect in our young people. So I'm sorry, but that really irks me to hear when they've got a Home Secretary, now Prime Minister, who's telling people basically get lost. And yes, you could say they're illegal immigrants. There are many reasons why people are in our country as refugees, and I think that's really quite a very insightful thing to say. I just want to raise that point.
Thanks, Dan. The gentleman next to you, Jackie, please. Make it nice and easy for you.
Hello. I was at the hustings in Carpen 2 years ago, and I was told that, or informed that Heidi was going to win this end of story, you know. And that sort of mirrors my entire voting life, really, because I've always lived in this safe seat. So I could have stayed in bed at every election, didn't make any difference whatsoever.
If everybody did that, there wouldn't be an election.
Well, sure, but bear this in mind. You've touched upon electoral reform, yet the government, strong and stable, is only put there by 24% of the electorate.
Yes, sorry, we do need to get on to your question, please.
Yeah, okay. If we're assured that everyone's going to vote Conservative again for the next 4 or 5 years, bear in mind, I would ask the candidates, are you going to increase the funding for national health? Is that going to be done by more privatisation? And if so, bear in mind, of course, that people who put money into things want a return on their investment.
Thank you. So, Simon has 3 questions, I think.
3? I counted 2. I'll do 2. And obviously the first one is to reiterate the Green Party policy, which is we must change our electoral system. It's a nonsense we can't, and we would propose specifically an additional member system for government in Parliament, and locally a single transferable vote. And I hope the other candidates will improve on their yes, we sort of think it's a good idea, and actually come up with a real idea as to what they would suggest as electoral reform. NHS, yes, we must reverse the funding that's been sucked out of the NHS, and yes, we absolutely must wheel back on the privatisation, the creeping privatisation that's happening in the NHS. You're right, in another 5-10 years that process will perhaps be irreversible because it will have gone on for so long. Our MP, Caroline Lucas, was absolutely fundamental in trying to reverse that in Parliament over the last 2 terms. Unfortunately, it's not happened. But the Green Party would absolutely do both of those things. What was the third one that was counted in there?
I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, we'll take that as the 2.
Thank you. Susan, then.
Thanks. I've lost track of the 3 questions, but I will first address your the hold on power by one party. I think it's very dangerous to have a party that is going to get in, and therefore, if you want to get elected, your best option is to join that party, because you'll have a great chance of getting elected. And then there's a whip. That's a bad combination, and I agree, it's extremely demoralising. And people with good instincts and good ideas will not be able to put those forward in that kind of environment, and we will not have a change.
The other point was, just quickly, the government elected by 24% of the people.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I obviously support proportional representation. Lib Dems work very hard for the one vote that they get. They have to work a lot harder for it, and we do work very hard. You asked about investment in health. The Lib Dems have set out basically what amounts to emergency funding to prevent the NHS from collapsing, and they've set out how they would do that. They've set out, I think it's what, 6 million for mental health, public health, social care. They've broken this down. But this is an emergency situation that the NHS is in, and we need that stopgap funding straight away.
Thank you, Susan. Heidi.
Well, first of all, I'd like you to be happy to get out of bed, even if I am re-elected, which, by the way, I absolutely don't take for granted. I work extremely hard to earn every single vote, and I would hate for anybody to feel that I was just a shoo-in who didn't try to represent every single voter in South Cambs. I go out of my way to try and prove that I am cross-party, and I will help every single person who needs my help, because my role, first and foremost, is to you, not to the Conservative Party. You are my bosses. Just touching on NHS funding, it doesn't feel like it, but we are putting in more funding than ever before. Thank you. I was going to put a comma there, but you've answered it for me. But you're absolutely right. And not only do you have more people, but it's a growing ageing population who have more demands, as we will understand, on the health system. I'm one of a cross-party group of MPs who've met with the Prime Minister twice in the last couple of months to ask her if she would consider an independent commission to look into how the NHS and social care should be funded for the long term, to take the political heat totally out of it and be grown up and sensible about it. And I'm reasonably hopeful, I don't know, but that there will be something in the manifesto, because there are many of us that have been campaigning on that for some time. We just have to take politics out of it altogether and just address the very real issue that we have, particularly in parts of the country like this, where we're typically healthy, we have Addenbrooks, and we do live longer, so the pressures are exacerbated for us here. And I think the electoral system, I don't know if PR is the right answer. I don't like the idea of a disconnect. I think the person who earns your vote locally should be the person who represents you in Westminster. But I do respect the fact that an awful lot of people feel disenfranchised and their vote doesn't count. I will work very hard to earn every vote. But if there is a better system, then I certainly would be unafraid of it.
Thanks, Heidi. And then finally, this round, Dan.
So thank you, Colin. Raising some really, really good points, actually. And I think about when it comes to voting systems, I'll address that point firstly. PR is a great system in many ways. It delivers a lot of good things. But if we're honest, the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party in 1945 were not pro the NHS. And that was delivered through a majority government. So it does actually deliver. And so I think it's unfortunate there are massive problems with the system in regards to 24% of the vote, but actually at the same time having a strong government to deliver positive things can be fantastic. I think also if you look at Belgium, I think it was almost a year they were out of government because the PR system didn't deliver a government in that instance. Yeah. So that isn't actually a strong thing for the country generally. So it's not like one system's good and the other's bad, there are definite faults with both. I think there might be the AV system, or single transferable vote. There are different types of systems we could think about, and I'd certainly be interested in the debate in those, most certainly. With regards to the NHS now, and funding the NHS, that is kind of one of the main focuses of the Labour Party, and it always has been. Who here, by the way, uses Windows XP? One person, marvellous. Thank you, Doctor, for coming. So we have a crisis which has only happened this week, and that has very much been because, of course, the ring fencing around infrastructure for the NHS has gone, and the hospitals are creaking under the pressure of being underfunded. The population is rising, the money's not going where it should be. So that is one of the key things that we should go for. I think equally there's a problem whereby Jeremy Hunt is probably one of the least inspiring ministers for health we've ever had. Somebody who's been to war with doctors. Andrew Lansley, don't even get me started on Andrew Lansley, thanks for that. The here's have gone, by the way, from the Tories in the room, sorry about that. But Andrew Lansley reorganised the NHS. The CCGs and NHS England can't decide if they should have a doctor's surgery in Hardwick or other places around the country, and Adam Brooks fails because it's going under, because it's not getting the funding it needs. So no, we must put money into it. This Minister for Health has been taken to court and found guilty of actually breaking the law by shutting down A&E departments in Lewisham. And I don't think we can actually tolerate this any longer. There will not be an NHS left if we don't do something about it now.
I just wanted to ask Heidi to reiterate her support for proportional representation, which she did in these hustings last time. And I completely agree that the system that we're proposing, which is an additional member system, does not take away your individual constituency MP. Your individual constituency MP, which I absolutely agree is a very, very positive thing, would remain. In addition, hence the name additional member, we would have top-up MPs that balance the proportionality of the vote in Parliament. So on that basis, will you reiterate your support for PR?
I still don't agree. The theory I agree with, but I don't like the idea of disconnect of just having constituency MPs and then people parachuted on the top. Policy should come from the bottom up, and I don't believe that having additional people just superimposed on top to make the numbers work, I don't think that is the right way.
So which form of PR do you want to?
I don't know whether it's PR or it's AV. We've discussed this. We're having a little chat here in the room. I'm not sure how this is.
That's the question that was asked. And AV Plus would do the same thing,
I think,
but it would take away your constituency MP. So AV Plus is a way of creating proportionality, but it's not as good, in my view, as additional member because it takes away your constituency MP.
I think with respect, we're getting a little bit technical.
Yeah.
Can we have one last question then for this round, please? Jackie, halfway down the aisle, please. Gentleman with blonde hair.
My name's Martin Cassie and I live in the village of Carpen. I'm pleased to hear Dan's comment earlier about the NHS.
All right. That's better by the sound of it. Okay. Hardwick is a village which is due to grow over the next 5 years by about 25% due to the sort of opportunistic development that's hitting so many villages across South Cambs at the moment. And my question relates to the delivery of healthcare in Hardwick, but the issue isn't unique to us. So it's become clear that the current policy of NHS England is resisting the establishment of new surgeries, even when developers are offering to build suitable facilities at no cost to the NHS. Effective primary healthcare in rural communities requires NHS England to actually take account of the realities of geographically dispersed communities with little or no public transport. Our campaign, and what we're asking for, is that the candidates basically commit to challenge this policy, this approach that's adopted by NHS England towards the delivery of primary health care.
So what's your question?
So my question is, will the candidates please back our campaign to address the policies which are restricting primary health care development?
Okay, thank you. So one for Susan first, please.
Thank you. Yes, I was glad to meet Martin and his campaign yesterday and to learn more about the issues, which, as you say, are replicated across South Cambs. With the speculative development has actually, I think, shone the spotlight on the fact that we don't have a way of growing GP surgeries. I've helped draw the NHS and County Council lead people on this for a similar situation in the Melbourne area, and actually they were not able to figure out themselves how this process should work. So clearly things are not working. When developers offer to build a surgery, they're not paying for the GP and the practice itself, and we have a GP recruitment problem, a huge problem. I think this is going to be very difficult to solve also so long as our councils are not well funded, and our councils are now being starved at every level, both in terms of social care, staff, also in planning, so they can't even deal with these speculative applications, and the South Cambs District Council has not been able to shift this planning problem in itself. Going back to the overall NHS question, which was asked in the previous line, as a country we are very stingy and we invest far too little overall in health. And if we would look at our European neighbours who have better systems, they're paying more money for it. These things do cost money, and we have to be a lot bolder, not just funding the NHS, but funding public services and all the infrastructure that makes this possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan, and now Heidi.
Thank you. You've emailed me about this just this week, last week, and also the local district council, Grenville Chamberlain, had emailed me a few days previously because I understand they came out of your parish council meeting. This is something that perhaps some of you might have heard the phrase STP, Sustainability and Transformation Plan. All clinical commissioning groups, all CCGs around the country at the moment, as we speak, are devising plans to see how they can make the whole healthcare system in that county work more efficiently and use money better. So that's bringing GPs, hospitals, social care, county councils together. So this to me is a sort of thing that needs to be fed into that. Clearly, all our hands are tied at the moment in this period of purdah. We're not able to speak to the CCG or the NHS, they won't talk to us. But what I understand Nicola in my office has tentatively done is, should I be successfully re-elected on the 8th of June, then I believe we have the meeting in the diary already to try and talk about it and see what we can do.
Thanks, Heidi. Dan, please.
Well, we used to have in this country a Minister for Health who's actually responsible for everyone's health in the nation. And then Andrew Lansley, God bless him, decided to get rid of all that in the Health and Social Care Act. So 2012, the system changed. And now we have more bureaucracy, we have more confusion, and the CCG and NHS England can't decide who's actually responsible for this area. That's the problem, it's bad policy. So the system itself is the problem, and that means we can't go any further. It's all very well to say, yes, we've got kind of NHS provision around the area to go to, but if you're in a place like the south of Hardwick with 2 buses coming in each day, 1 in, 1 out, then it's very hard to get to your GP appointment in another village. So actually that is the big problem, and as I said to you when I came at the weekend, I'm very happy to support this because I think it's actually the oomph of an MP who can make things happen to try and navigate through that difficult system. About Susan's point, by the way, about as a country we're stingy, I don't think that's fair at all. I think our governments have actually let us down. And I also think we are moving towards a system where Virgin Eye Care, for instance, are providing some of the services. We are paying for the profits of companies. While we're paying for their profits and they're making profits out of our ill health, I don't think we've got a system which is really serving us well. And that is at the very heart of the problem. So the Health and Social Care Act was a disaster. They're not my words, that is actually George Osborne who said that. And I think that we should be very careful to navigate our way forward so we have an NHS that actually works for everyone in society.
Thanks, Dan. And finally, Simon.
Well, I'd echo a lot of what Dan and Susan have said, and Green Party policy is to repeal the Health and Social Care Act, and as I said earlier, Caroline Lucas has been trying very hard to do that. We would roll back privatisation. And specifically to answer your question, yes, I would absolutely support what you're trying to achieve, and I've said that already in your campaign. So for me, the broader issue that the Green Party would bring to the table is that we are all about trying to relocalise services and relocalise everything, actually. We need to relocalise our food system, which nobody talks about our food system, but it's a similar sort of issue. It's a health issue. And health, education, all of those things, our aim would be to relocalise them, and hopefully that would mean the sort of problems you're facing wouldn't exist.
Thank you, Simon.